Marcus Reed dropped to his knees in the snow and slammed both fists against a dead woman's chest. No pulse, no breath, no time. He didn't know her name. He didn't know she ran a billion-dollar empire. All he knew was that if he stopped pushing, she was gone. His arms burned. His lungs screamed. The blizzard buried them both alive. And then, one gasp. One impossible, fragile gasp that changed everything. But here's what Marcus never saw coming. The woman whose life he saved that night would return weeks later with a secret so dangerous it would nearly destroy him, his daughter, and everything he'd spent years protecting. If this story moves you, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this journey reaches. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single chapter. Now, let's begin. The call came in at 4:47 p.m. Marcus Reed had his hands buried inside the engine block of a rusted-out Dodge Ram when his phone buzzed on the workbench. He didn't even look at it. He already knew who it was. 3 seconds later, it buzzed again. He pulled his hands free, wiped them on a rag that was more grease than cloth, and picked up.
"Daddy, are you coming home?"
Zoe's voice hit him the way it always did, like a fist wrapped in velvet. She was 7 years old, sharp as a tack, and the only person in the world who could make Marcus Reed feel guilty without trying. "I'm coming, baby girl. Just finishing up."
"You said that an hour ago."
He closed his eyes. She was right. He had said that an hour ago. And 2 hours before that, he'd told her he'd be home by 3. It was almost 5 now, the winter sky over Jackson Hole already bruising dark, and Marcus was still standing in a freezing garage with somebody else's broken truck. 45 minutes, he said. "I promise."
"You promise? Or you promise like last time?"
That one stung. "I promise, so. Start pulling out your science fair stuff. We're building that solar system tonight." "The whole thing?" "The whole thing. Saturn's rings and everything." She squealed, that high, bright sound that made every 14-hour shift, every aching muscle, every bill he couldn't quite cover, feel worth it.
"Okay, Daddy, hurry!"
He hung up and stared at the phone for a second. The screen was cracked, had been for months. He kept meaning to fix it, the way he kept meaning to fix the porch step, and the leak under the kitchen sink, and the draft in Zoe's bedroom window. The list never got shorter. It just got heavier. Marcus locked the garage, climbed into his Chevy Silverado, and pulled onto the road. The truck was 15 years old, rusted along the wheel wells, heat barely working. But it ran. That was enough. In Marcus Reed's life, enough was the highest compliment anything got. He was 10 minutes outside town when the snow started. Not the soft, lazy kind that made Jackson Hole look like a Christmas card. This was the other kind. The kind that came sideways, angry, thick as cotton. Within minutes, the road disappeared. The headlights punched into a white wall and died. Visibility dropped to nothing. Marcus leaned forward, squinting, knuckles locked on the wheel. "Come on," he muttered. "Not tonight." The weather report had said flurries. This was not flurries. This was Wyoming reminding you that nature didn't negotiate. His phone buzzed again. He glanced down. Zoe. He couldn't answer. Not now. Not with both hands white-knuckling the wheel just to keep the truck between the ditches. "Almost home, baby girl," he whispered to no one. "Almost home." That's when he saw them. 2 blinking hazard lights, faint and orange, pulsing through the storm like a heartbeat. Marcus eased off the gas. A vehicle sat crooked on the shoulder of Teton Pass, one wheel buried deep in a snowbank. White Range Rover, brand new. The kind of car that cost more than Marcus made in 2 years. He should have kept driving. He had every reason to. Zoe was waiting. The storm was getting worse. He didn't know this person, didn't owe them anything. But Marcus Reed was not the kind of man who drove past someone in trouble. He never had been. His mother had raised him with a simple rule. You see someone down, you stop. Doesn't matter who they are, what they look like, or whether they do the same for you. He pulled over. The cold hit him like a wall when he stepped out. Not just cold, violent cold. The kind that reaches into your chest and squeezes. He grabbed the flashlight from behind the seat, pulled his jacket tight, and pushed through the snow toward the SUV. The driver's door was cracked open about an inch. Interior light on. He aimed the flashlight through the window, and his stomach dropped. A woman, slumped over the steering wheel, not moving. "Ma'am?" He knocked on the glass, hard. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Nothing. He pulled the door open. Blonde hair spilled from beneath a dark wool scarf. Her face was white, not pale, white. Lips blue, eyes closed. She looked like she was already gone. "Ma'am!" He grabbed her wrist, cold, searched for a pulse. Nothing. Marcus pulled out his phone. No signal. Not a single bar. Teton Pass was a dead zone on a good day. In a blizzard, it was a black hole. He looked back at her, then at the empty road behind him. No one was coming. No ambulance, no help, no miracle. Just him. "All right," he said. "All right." He unbuckled her seatbelt, slid his arms beneath her, and lifted her out of the vehicle. She weighed almost nothing, which scared him more than her silence. He laid her down on the snow, careful with her head, and dropped to his knees beside her. His hands were shaking, from the cold, from the adrenaline, from the very real possibility that he was about to watch a stranger die. "Don't you quit on me," he said. "You hear me? Don't you dare quit." He placed his palms on her sternum and started compressions. 1, 2, 3. He counted the way he'd been taught years ago in a community CPR class he'd almost skipped because Zoe had a cold that week. 4, 5, 6. He tilted her head back, pinched her nose, gave 2 breaths, watched her chest rise and fall with borrowed air. Nothing. He started again, harder this time, his arms screaming, the wind howling so loud he could barely hear his own counting. Come on, fight! 30 compressions, 2 breaths, again and again. Snow buried his knees, ice formed on his eyelashes, his fingers went numb, then his wrists, then his forearms. He didn't stop. "You got somebody waiting for you," he growled through clenched teeth. "I know you do. So fight. You fight right now." 2 minutes. 3. 5. Time stopped meaning anything. There was only the rhythm. Push, push, push. Breathe. Push, push, push. Breathe. His body was giving out. His lungs burned. A voice in the back of his head whispered the thing he refused to say out loud. "She's gone, Marcus. She's gone." "No," he said, and pushed harder. Then, a sound. So small he almost missed it. A gasp, thin as paper, fragile as glass. Marcus froze, hands hovering over her chest. His own breath stopped. Another gasp, deeper. Her chest rose on its own. Her eyelids fluttered. Once, twice, and then opened. Wide. Terrified. Like someone surfacing from a nightmare they weren't sure was over. She coughed. Weak. Ragged. Her eyes darted wildly until they found his face. "You're okay," Marcus said, and his voice cracked in a way he hadn't expected. "You're okay. I got you. You're safe." She tried to speak. Nothing came out but a hoarse whisper. "Don't talk. Just breathe. Can you do that for me? Just breathe." Tears slid from the corners of her eyes. She was shaking, her whole body vibrating like a string pulled too tight. Marcus stripped off his jacket, his only jacket, and wrapped it around her shoulders. The cold hit his back and chest like a blade, but he didn't flinch. "I'm Marcus," he said. "We need to get you warm. There's a clinic about 10 miles down the mountain. Can you move?" A trembling nod. "What's your name?" She blinked, swallowed hard. "Olivia," she whispered, then stopped, blinked again. "Liv." He helped her up, one arm around her waist, and half carried her to his truck. He cranked the heat as high as it would go, which wasn't much, and pulled back onto the road. The cab was silent except for the rattle of the engine and the howl of the storm outside. Olivia sat in the passenger seat, clutching his jacket around her like armor. She stared straight ahead, eyes glassy, jaw tight. She didn't look at him, didn't speak. Marcus didn't push. Some silences are earned. Halfway to the clinic, she spoke, barely above a whisper. "Why did you stop?" Marcus glanced at her. "What do you mean? The storm, the road. You could have kept driving. Anyone would have." "I'm not anyone." She turned her head slowly and looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time. Something shifted in her face. Not gratitude exactly. Something deeper. Something she didn't have a word for yet. "Thank you," she said. "I mean that. You can thank me by not dying in my truck. My daughter would never forgive me for the mess." A ghost of a smile crossed her lips. It disappeared as fast as it came. At the clinic, Marcus carried her through the front door. 2 nurses scrambled. He gave them everything he had. Found her unconscious on Teton Pass, no pulse. Performed CPR. Didn't know how long she'd been out. "Are you a relative?" one nurse asked. "No," Marcus said. "Just a guy who was driving by." They took her back. He stood in the waiting room, snow melting off his boots, his shirt soaked with sweat and cold. His hands were still shaking. He looked down at them, these hands that fixed engines for a living, that braided his daughter's hair every morning, that had just brought a stranger back from the dead. He sat down in a plastic chair and waited. An hour passed. Then a nurse approached. "She's stable. Severe dehydration, exhaustion, mild hypothermia. You got to her just in time. Another 10 minutes." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. "Can I see her?" Marcus asked. The nurse hesitated. "She actually asked to be left alone. But she left this for you." She handed him something small and heavy. A gold watch. Cartier. The kind of thing Marcus had only ever seen behind glass in stores he'd never walk into. He turned it over. On the back, an engraving. "Forever, Mom." "She said she found it in your truck," the nurse said. "Said she didn't want to cause trouble." "She left?" "About 20 minutes ago. Called a cab." Marcus stared at the watch, then at the empty hallway. Gone. No last name, no number, no explanation. Just a name that might not be real, and a watch that clearly meant everything. He drove home in silence. The storm had died down, but something inside him had not. He kept turning the watch over in his mind. "Forever, Mom." This wasn't something you left behind by accident. This wasn't carelessness. This was deliberate. A message. A thread left hanging. But a thread to what? Back at the cabin, Zoe was asleep on the couch, her pink backpack open, crayons scattered across the cushions. Her solar system poster was half drawn. Jupiter was enormous. Saturn had no rings yet, and a small yellow sun wore a smiley face. Marcus lifted her gently and carried her to bed. She stirred.
Daddy?
I'm here, Zoe.
Did you bring the glitter?
He almost laughed. Almost. Tomorrow, baby. We'll finish tomorrow.
You promise?
I promise. She was asleep before he set her down. Marcus went back to the kitchen, sat at the table, put the watch down next to his chipped coffee mug. The house was quiet. Snow ticked against the windows. The furnace hummed its low, tired song. He picked up the watch again, ran his thumb across the engraving. Forever, Mom. Someone's daughter had been dying on that road tonight. Someone's child, and he had brought her back. But she had run from him, the way people run when they're carrying something they can't put down. He thought about Claire, his wife, Zoe's mother. The fire that took her 3 years ago, a faulty wire in the walls of the house they'd saved for. The house that was supposed to be there forever. He remembered the sound of the sirens, the heat on his face. The moment he knew, before anyone told him, that she was gone. After that, Marcus had rebuilt. Not his life, that was too grand a word. He had assembled something. A routine, a structure. Wake up, feed Zoe, go to work, come home, repeat. He didn't let people in, didn't have time for it, didn't have room. But tonight, kneeling in the snow with his hands on a stranger's chest, begging her to breathe, something had cracked open. Something he'd sealed shut the day Claire died. He didn't know this woman, didn't know her story, but he knew the weight in her eyes. He recognized it because he carried the same one. His phone buzzed. Zoe had sent him a text before falling asleep. Just 3 words and a heart emoji. I love you. Marcus put down the watch, pressed his palms flat on the table, let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for 3 years. Whatever that woman was running from, wherever she'd gone, he hoped she found what she needed. He hoped the thread she'd left behind wasn't just a goodbye. But he couldn't chase it. He had a daughter to raise, a garage to run, a solar system to build. That was enough. It had to be enough. He turned off the kitchen light. The watch sat alone on the table, its second hand still ticking. Quiet, steady, faithful. Forever, Mom. Outside, the last of the storm cleared. Stars appeared one by one over the Tetons, sharp and ancient, indifferent to the small dramas of the people below. But the universe had plans for Marcus Reed, plans he couldn't outrun, plans that started with a heartbeat returning in the snow and ended somewhere he never could have imagined. He just didn't know it yet. 3 weeks passed, and Marcus Reed still had the watch. He told himself he'd turn it in, drop it at the clinic, leave it with the county sheriff, let somebody else figure out where it belonged. But every time he opened the drawer and saw that gold face catching the light, those 2 words etched into the back, "Forever, Mom," his hands stopped. He couldn't explain it. He'd never been sentimental about objects. When Claire died, he'd kept exactly 3 things: her wedding ring, a photograph, and the blanket she'd crocheted for Zoe the week before the fire. Everything else went into boxes that went into a storage unit he hadn't opened since. But this watch wasn't his grief. It was someone else's. And that made it harder to put down. Zoe noticed. Kids always notice.
"Daddy, whose watch is that?"
They were at the kitchen table. Zoe was gluing cotton balls onto a poster board. Her solar system project, 2 weeks late, but her teacher had given her an extension because, as Zoe explained with devastating sincerity,
"My dad works really hard, and sometimes he forgets things, but he doesn't mean to."
Marcus looked up from his coffee. Just something someone left behind.
"At the shop?"
Sort of.
"Is it the ladies? The one from the snow?"
Marcus set his mug down. He'd made the mistake of telling Zoe a simplified version of what happened that night. Found a lady, helped her, she was okay. He'd left out the part about the no pulse, the CPR, the blue lips. But Zoe had latched onto the story like it was a fairy tale. "Yeah," he said.
"It's hers."
"Are you going to give it back?"
"I don't know where she is, Zoe."
"So find her," he almost smiled.
"It's not that simple."
Zoe pressed a cotton ball firmly onto Neptune and looked at him with Claire's eyes. Dark, serious, unflinching.
"Daddy, if I lost something that said Forever Mom on it,
I'd want someone to find me." Marcus didn't have an answer for that. He never did when Zoe channeled her mother. At the garage, work carried on the way it always did. Oil changes, brake jobs, the steady rhythm of small-town maintenance. Marcus had built the shop from nothing, a lease on a half-collapsed building, tools bought second-hand, a reputation earned one honest repair at a time. Jackson Hole wasn't easy for a black man running a business. He'd learned that early. Some folks brought their cars without hesitation. Others drove an extra 40 minutes to the next town rather than hand their keys to him. Marcus never talked about it, never complained. He just did the work, did it well. Let the results speak. Darnell, his best friend since high school, had a different philosophy. Darnell tended bar at the Iron Horse Saloon, poured whiskey like therapy, and had an opinion about everything. "You still got that watch?" Darnell asked one evening, sliding Marcus a beer he hadn't ordered. "Don't start." "I'm just asking." "You're never just asking." Darnell leaned on the bar. "A woman shows up out of nowhere in a $250,000 truck, nearly dies on the road. You save her life. She vanishes without a trace and leaves behind a gold Cartier? Brother, that's not a coincidence. That's a plot." "It's a watch, Darnell. It's a breadcrumb. She wanted you to find her." Marcus took a long drink. Or she was confused, half dead, and forgot it. Nobody forgets a Cartier, Marcus. Not even half dead. Marcus said nothing, because Darnell was right, and they both knew it. What neither of them knew, what nobody in Jackson Hole could have known, was that the woman Marcus had pulled from the snow was, at that exact moment, sitting in a corner suite at the Ritz-Carlton in Denver, staring at a muted television screen that showed her own face. Olivia Sinclair hadn't slept in 4 days. The news had found her. Not the rescue, thank God, but the disappearance. Sinclair Dynamics CEO missing after board dispute. Sources say Olivia Sinclair left without notice. Stock dips as leadership vacuum grows. Her phone had 87 unread messages, 14 missed calls from Martin Cross, 6 from her assistant, 2 from her attorney, 1 from a board member who'd written simply, "This is unacceptable." She'd read none of them. Instead, she sat on the edge of the bed in clothes she'd been wearing for 2 days, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago, and replayed the same moment over and over in her head. Not the crash, not the cold, not the moment she opened her eyes and saw a stranger's face above hers, raw and desperate, begging her to breathe. She replayed the moment she ran, the clinic, the fluorescent lights, the nurse asking if she wanted to see the man who saved her. And Olivia Sinclair, who had stared down hostile boardrooms, who had closed deals that made grown men sweat, who had built an empire on the principle that you never flinch. Olivia had panicked. Because Marcus Reed had seen her at her weakest. Not the CEO, not the magazine cover, not the brand. He'd seen the woman underneath, broken, gasping, barely alive. And she couldn't bear it. So she left the watch, her mother's watch, the only thing she owned that she truly loved. She left it because she couldn't leave with nothing said, and she couldn't stay long enough to say it. It was cowardice dressed as grace, and she knew it. Her phone buzzed. Martin Cross, again. This time she answered. Olivia. His voice was sharp, clipped, the way it always was when he smelled weakness. Where are you? Denver? The board meets Thursday. You need to be here. I'm not coming back. A pause, then colder. That's not your decision to make. I'm the CEO, Martin. You're the CEO who disappeared without explanation, tanked our stock price, and is currently hiding in a hotel room like a fugitive. The board is losing patience. I'm losing patience. Olivia's jaw tightened. I needed time. Time is money, Olivia, and right now you're costing us both. She closed her eyes. She could see him, silver hair, tailored suit, that predatory calm he wore like cologne. Martin Cross had been on the board since her father's era. He'd supported Olivia's rise because it served him. And now that she was faltering, he circled like he always did. Give me 2 weeks, she said. You have 1. The line went dead. Olivia set the phone down and pressed her palms against her eyes. 1 week. 1 week to decide whether to go back to a life that was killing her, or to chase something she couldn't even name. She opened her laptop. She didn't know what she was looking for. Or maybe she did and couldn't admit it. Her fingers typed before her brain caught up. Jackson Hole Mechanic, CPR Rescue. A local news blurb appeared, small, buried on page 6 of the Mountain Times digital edition. Local mechanic performs life-saving CPR on stranded driver during blizzard. No photo, no name, but a quote from the clinic nurse. He didn't leave her side for an hour. Most people wouldn't have stopped. Olivia's chest tightened. She searched more. Auto repair, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. A handful of results. Chain shops, dealerships. Then, near the bottom, Reed Automotive. A bare-bones website. One photo of a small garage with an American flag hanging over the bay door. A phone number. A Yelp listing with 11 reviews, all 5 stars. One review read, Marcus fixed my truck when no one else would. Honest man, fair price, the real deal. She stared at that line for a long time. The real deal. When was the last time anyone had called her that? The idea didn't come all at once. It built slowly, like a wave gathering force. Her mother's cabin near Teton Pass, the one Lillian had bought 30 years ago, back when Jackson Hole was still wild and cheap and full of painters chasing the light. Olivia hadn't been there in over a decade, but in the detached garage behind the cabin sat her mother's 1974 Ford Bronco. Forest green, manual everything. Lillian used to drive it up mountain roads with the windows down, singing off-key, telling 12-year-old Olivia that the world was wider and kinder than it seemed. Then cancer came, and the bronco sat, and the cabin gathered dust. And Olivia learned that the world was neither wide nor kind. It was a machine that rewarded the relentless and consumed the rest. But now, staring at a cracked phone screen in a hotel room that cost more per night than Marcus Reed probably earned in a week, Olivia Sinclair made a decision that no spreadsheet or strategy session could have predicted. She was going back. Not as Olivia Sinclair, CEO. Not as a headline or a stock ticker. Just Liv. A woman with a broken car and a broken heart, looking for someone honest enough to help with both. She packed one bag, left her designer luggage in the closet, drove her rental, not the Range Rover this time, a plain Jeep, 6 hours through the mountains. When she crossed into Jackson Hole, her hands were shaking on the wheel. She found the garage at the edge of town, smaller than she'd imagined, a hand-painted sign over the door, an old Chevy Silverado parked out front, the same truck that had saved her life. She sat in the Jeep for 11 minutes, counting breaths, talking herself out of it, talking herself back in. Then she got out and walked through the door. The bell jingled overhead. Marcus was bent under the hood of an old Chevy, wrench in hand, gospel music playing low from a paint-spattered radio. He looked up and froze. Recognition hit his face like a slap. Surprise, confusion, something guarded and electric all at once. He straightened slowly, rag in hand, eyes locked on hers. "Hey," Olivia said. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Marcus didn't move for a long moment. Then he wiped his hands, deliberate, slow. "You're the woman from the pass." "Yeah." "You disappeared." "I know." "Left a pretty expensive watch in my truck." "I know that too." Silence. The radio played on, a woman's voice singing about mercy. Marcus crossed his arms. "So what are you doing here?" "I have a job for you, if you'll take it." "A job?" "A restoration. My mother's 1974 Bronco. It's been sitting in a garage about 4 miles from here for 12 years. I want it running again." "Why me?" "Because you stopped." The words hung between them. Marcus studied her. Not the way men usually looked at women. Not the way people looked at strangers. He studied her the way a mechanic studies an engine. Looking for what's broken. Looking for what's real. "What's your name?" he asked. "Your real name." "Liv," she said. And it wasn't a lie exactly. It just wasn't the whole truth. "Okay, Liv. I'll come look at it. But I don't do charity work, and I don't do games. You want the truck fixed? I'll fix it. But straight talk only. We clear?"
"Crystal."
He nodded once. "I'll follow you out there tomorrow morning, 8 sharp." "I'll be ready." She turned to leave. At the door, she stopped.
"Marcus?"
"Yeah?"
"Thank you. For that night. I never got to say it properly."
Something shifted in his face. A crack in the armor, brief and quickly sealed. "You're here. That's thanks enough." She walked out into the cold afternoon light, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, the weight on her chest felt lighter. Not gone, but lighter. The next morning, Marcus followed Liv's Jeep out to the property. The cabin was tucked into a stand of pines off a dirt road, small, weathered, clearly untouched for years. But the garage behind it was solid, and when Olivia rolled up the heavy wooden door, there it sat. The Bronco. Forest green under a thick layer of dust. Tires flat. Chrome dull. A relic. Marcus walked around it once, hands in his pockets, eyes sharp. He popped the hood, examined the engine block, checked the frame for rust, knelt and looked at the undercarriage. "How long since it ran?" he asked.
12 years, maybe 13.
He whistled low. "She's rough, but the bones are good. Engine's a straight 6. They built these things to last. Gonna need a full teardown, though. New gaskets, new fuel system, brakes, electrical. We're talking months."
I'm not in a hurry. He looked at her.
Most people who drive Range Rovers are in a hurry about everything.
I'm not most people.
Starting to figure that out. He agreed to the job, set a fair price. Olivia didn't negotiate, which surprised him. In his experience, the richer the client, the harder they haggled. But Liv just nodded, shook his hand, and asked when he could start. "Monday," he said, "and I'll need access to the garage."
I'll leave it unlocked.
"You trust people that easy?" She held his gaze.
I trust you.
Marcus didn't know what to do with that. So he did what he always did when emotions got too close. He went back to work. But the next day, and the day after, and the day after that, Liv showed up at the cabin garage. Not hovering, not micromanaging. She brought coffee. Good coffee. Not the gas station stuff Marcus was used to. She asked questions. Real ones.
Not, how much will this cost? But, why does this part matter? And, how did you learn to do this? Marcus answered carefully at first. Short sentences. Mechanics shorthand. But Liv listened the way nobody had listened to him in years. Leaning in, following his hands with her eyes, nodding like what he said mattered. Not because she was trying to flatter him, because she genuinely wanted to understand. On the 4th day, she asked, "How long have you been doing this?" "Since I was 15. My uncle had a shop in Detroit. I used to skip school to help him."
Did you get in trouble?
"Every week. But I could rebuild a transmission by the time I was 17, so I figured the trade-off was worth it." She smiled. Not the polished, careful smile he'd seen that first day. A real one. Crooked. Warm. It changed her whole face. "What about you?" Marcus asked, surprising himself. He usually didn't pry. "What do you do when you're not rescuing old trucks?" The smile flickered.
I used to run a company.
Used to?
"It's complicated."
Most things are.
She looked away. "I built something I thought mattered, but somewhere along the way, it stopped being about the work and started being about the performance. The image. I lost myself in it." Marcus tightened a bolt and didn't look up. "My wife used to say that ambition's a good horse, but a bad master."
Your wife sounds wise.
She was. A beat. She passed. 3 years ago. Olivia went quiet. Not the uncomfortable silence people usually offered, the kind loaded with pity and platitudes. Just quiet. Respectful. Like she understood that some losses don't need words.
Zoe's mother?
She asked softly. "Yeah."
I'm sorry.
"Me too." That afternoon, the garage door burst open and Zoe exploded in, backpack bouncing, cheeks flushed from the cold.
Daddy, Mrs. Patterson said my solar system was the second best in...
She stopped, stared at Olivia, eyes wide, then wider.
It's you,
Zoe breathed.
You're the snow lady.
Marcus closed his eyes. Here we go. Olivia blinked.
The snow lady? My daddy saved you. He told me. Are you okay now? You look okay. You're really pretty. Is that your truck? It's really old. Can I help? I'm good at cleaning things. Well, mostly. Sometimes I make more mess. But I try really hard.
The words tumbled out in one breathless stream, and Olivia, billionaire CEO, boardroom intimidator, woman who had made senators stammer, stood completely disarmed by a 7-year-old in pigtails.
Yes,
Olivia managed.
I'm okay. Thanks to your dad.
Zoe beamed at Marcus like he'd hung the moon, then turned back to Olivia.
Can I stay and help? Please? I won't touch the important stuff.
Marcus started to say no, but Olivia spoke first.
I'd love the company.
And just like that, the dynamic shifted. What had been two cautious adults circling each other became something warmer, looser, more alive.
Zoe chattered non-stop about school, about her teacher, about the boy in her class who ate glue, about how she wanted to be an astronaut or a veterinarian, or maybe both. Olivia listened to every word like it was gospel. Marcus watched from the corner of his eye while he worked on the Bronco's fuel line. He watched Zoe hand Olivia a rag and show her how to properly wipe down a fender. He watched Olivia crouch to Zoe's height, take the rag seriously, and follow instructions with the focus of someone who'd just been given the most important task in the world. Something in his chest moved. Not broke, not cracked, just moved, like a door that had been stuck for years, shifting on its hinges. That night, after Zoe was in bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table in the quiet. The watch sat in its usual spot. He picked it up, turned it over. Forever, Mom. Whoever Liv was, whatever she was hiding, she was real with Zoe. And in Marcus Reed's world, that was the only currency that mattered. But Darnell's words echoed in his mind, stubborn and sharp. She's hiding something, brother. Be careful. Marcus put the watch back in the drawer, closed it slowly. Careful was all he'd been for 3 years. Careful was the wall he'd built brick by brick after Claire died. Careful was the reason he hadn't let anyone close, hadn't taken a risk, hadn't felt anything beyond the safe, numb routine of survival. Careful was keeping him alive, but it wasn't letting him live. He turned off the light and stood in the dark kitchen, listening to the wind outside and the quiet breathing of his daughter upstairs. Something was coming. He could feel it the way you feel a storm before the sky changes. A pressure in the air, a charge you can't name. Whatever Liv was carrying, whatever secret lived behind those careful eyes, it was going to surface. And when it did, Marcus Reed would have to decide what mattered more. The walls he'd built, or the woman who'd somehow found a door through them. He went to bed. He didn't sleep. Weeks passed, and the rhythm held. Every morning, Marcus drove out to the cabin garage. Every morning, Liv was already there. Coffee waiting, sleeves rolled, ready to work. She'd learned to hand him tools without being asked. Knew the difference between a socket wrench and a torque wrench. Could hold a flashlight steady for 45 minutes without complaining, which put her ahead of 90% of the guys Marcus had ever worked with. They talked while they worked. Not about big things. Not yet. Small things. The kind of truths that slip out when your hands are busy and your guard is down. I burned water once, Olivia said one afternoon, handing him a gasket. In college. My roommate called the fire department. You burned water. I forgot I turned the stove on. Left to study. Came back to a pot glowing red and a dorm full of smoke. Marcus shook his head. And you're telling me this, why? Because you asked if I could cook. I asked if you wanted to stay for dinner. That's not the same question. She laughed. That real laugh. The one that started in her chest and surprised her every time, like she'd forgotten the sound of it. Zoe's making spaghetti, Marcus added, which means I'm making spaghetti and she's stirring once and calling it hers. I'd love to stay. That was the first dinner. It wasn't the last. Zoe took to Olivia the way sunlight takes to open ground, completely, without hesitation. She showed Liv her drawings, her rock collection, her secret hiding spot behind the couch where she kept important documents, which turned out to be a folder of crayon portraits of people she loved. This one's Daddy, Zoe said, holding up a stick figure with enormous arms.
I made his arms big because he carries everything.
Olivia's throat tightened.
That's beautiful, Zoe. This one's Mommy, a figure with wings and a yellow halo. She's in heaven. Daddy says she watches us from there. I'm sure she does. Do you have a mommy?
The question landed like a stone in still water. Olivia's hands went still in her lap.
I did, she said quietly. She passed away when I was a little older than you.
Zoe's eyes went wide and soft. She reached over and placed her small hand on Olivia's arm.
I'm sorry. That's really sad.
It is.
Do you miss her?
Every single day. Zoe nodded with the gravity of someone who understood exactly what that meant.
Me too. About my mommy.
Then, with the seamless logic of a child,
maybe they're friends up there. My mommy and your mommy? Maybe they're painting together.
Olivia couldn't speak. She pressed her lips together hard and blinked fast, but the tears came anyway. Hot, sudden, unstoppable. She turned her face, trying to hide it, but Zoe had already climbed into her lap and wrapped both arms around her neck.
It's okay,
Zoe whispered.
Daddy cries sometimes too. He thinks I don't know, but I do.
From the kitchen doorway, Marcus stood holding a wooden spoon, frozen. He watched this woman, this guarded, careful woman who deflected every personal question with grace, come apart in his daughter's arms. And he watched his daughter hold her together with the effortless compassion that children carry before the world teaches them to withhold it. He didn't say anything. He went back to the stove, stirred the sauce, wiped his own eyes with the back of his hand. After Zoe went to bed that night, Marcus and Olivia sat at the kitchen table. 2 mugs of coffee, a long silence that wasn't uncomfortable, just full.
She's extraordinary, Olivia said. You know that, right?
She's her mother's daughter.
She's yours too, Marcus. That kindness? She gets that from you.
He looked down at his hands, wrapped around the mug. I don't know about that. Most days I feel like I'm just trying not to mess her up. That's what every good parent feels. You sound like you know something about it. I know what it's like to grow up without one of the people you needed most, and I know your daughter doesn't have that hole. Whatever you think you're not giving her, you're wrong. Marcus held her gaze. The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of something. The watch, maybe, still in its drawer, still counting seconds like a patient heartbeat. Who are you, Liv? He asked. Not accusatory, not suspicious, just honest. I mean, really. You show up out of nowhere. You've got a cabin and a classic car, and you talk about running a company like it's past tense. You know things about people that most people don't notice. And you look at my daughter like she's saving your life just by being herself. Olivia's fingers tightened around her mug. I told you, I'm just someone trying to fix an old truck. Nobody drives across the state to fix an old truck. I did. Why? She looked at him, held his eyes, and for one breathless second, he thought she was going to tell him. He could see it, the truth sitting right behind her teeth, pressing to get out. But she swallowed it, smiled, and said, because someone once told me that some things are worth restoring. Marcus let it go. Not because he believed her, but because pushing people past their limit never got you the truth. It just got you a better lie. He walked her to the door. She paused on the porch. Marcus? Yeah. This, what we're doing, the Bronco, dinners, Zoe. This is real for me. I need you to know that. It's real for me too. Whatever happens, remember I said that. A strange thing to say. He filed it away the way he filed away loose bolts. Somewhere he'd find it later, when it mattered. That was a Tuesday. By Friday, Everything was different. It started with Zoe. She came running into the garage after school, face flushed, waving a folded newspaper over her head like a flag.
Daddy, Daddy, look! Liv's famous!
Marcus set down the wrench. What? Zoe thrust the paper at him. The Mountain Times. Front page, below the fold. A photograph, slightly grainy, taken from across the street, showed Olivia stepping out of Grace's cafe. Zoe's hand was in hers. Both of them were smiling. The headline, Sinclair Dynamics CEO resurfaces after mysterious hiatus. Olivia Sinclair spotted in Jackson Hole. Marcus read it twice, then a third time, slower, each word landing like a hammer on glass. Olivia Sinclair, CEO of Sinclair Dynamics. One of the most powerful women in American technology. Net worth somewhere north of $2 billion. Missing from public life for nearly a month. Board of directors in turmoil. Stock price declining.
And she'd been sanding rust off a 1974 Bronco in his garage, eating spaghetti at his kitchen table, letting his 7-year-old daughter braid her hair.
Daddy?
Zoe's voice was small now, sensing the shift.
Is Liv in trouble?
Marcus put the paper down. His jaw was set, his eyes hard. Go wait in the truck, Zoe.
But
now. Zoe flinched. She picked up her backpack and walked out without another word, looking over her shoulder once, with eyes that pleaded for something she couldn't name. Marcus stood alone in the garage. He picked up the newspaper again, stared at the photo. Olivia's face. The same face that had laughed at his jokes, cried in his daughter's arms, sat across from him asking about gaskets and grief, smiled back from the front page of a life she'd hidden from him completely. He thought about every conversation, every question she'd deflected, every half-truth wrapped in just enough honesty to feel real. I used to run a company. It's complicated. I'm just someone trying to fix an old truck. His hand shook. Not from anger, or not just anger. From something worse. From the sickening feeling of being fooled by someone you'd started to trust. Someone you'd started to let in. He put the paper on the workbench, face up, and waited. Olivia arrived at 4 o'clock, same as always. Coffee in one hand, a small bag of pastries from Grace's in the other. She pushed through the door, smiling.
I brought those almond things Zoe likes.
She stopped. Marcus stood in the middle of the garage, arms at his sides, the newspaper open on the bench behind him. The smile died on her face. Sit down, Marcus said. Quiet. Level. The kind of calm that's worse than shouting. Olivia set the coffee in the bag down slowly. She glanced at the paper. Color drained from her face like water from a cracked glass.
Marcus.
Olivia Sinclair. He said the name like he was reading a verdict. CEO of Sinclair Dynamics. $2 billion. Forbes cover. Fast Company. The Wall Street Journal. Let me explain. Explain what? That you lied to me? That you walked into my shop, looked me in the eye, and gave me a fake name? It's not fake. Liv is what my mother called me. Don't. His voice cracked like a whip. Don't twist this into something sentimental. You let me believe you were just a woman with an old car and a sad story. You let my daughter believe it. Zoe showed you her drawings, her hiding spot. She told you about her mother. She trusted you. I know. Do you? Do you have any idea what trust costs in this house? I don't let people in, Liv. Olivia, whatever the hell your name is. I don't let people near my daughter. But I let you in. Because I thought you were real. I am real. Her voice rose, raw and breaking. Everything I told you was real. The grief, my mother, the bronco, all of it. The only thing I hid was a name and a title that have been suffocating me for 15 years.
A name and a title. That's what you call a billion-dollar empire? A seat on every power list in the country? You think that's a small detail?
To me it was. You don't understand. Out there, I'm not a person, Marcus. I'm a brand, a stock price, a target. I came here because for the first time in my life, someone saw me. Not the CEO, not the headline. Me. And I was terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd stop seeing me and start seeing her. Marcus stared at her. His chest heaved. The silence between them vibrated like a live wire. You should have told me, he said, voice low and rough. Day one. You should have walked in and said, my name is Olivia Sinclair. I run a tech company, and I need help with my mother's car. That's it. That's all you had to do. Tears streamed down her face. You're right. I know you're right. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't undo what Zoe felt when she handed me that paper. She was proud of you. She was excited.
And now she's sitting in my truck confused because the woman she's been braiding hair with is somebody she saw on a newspaper. Olivia's composure shattered. She covered her mouth with both hands, shoulders shaking, tears falling onto the concrete floor. From the garage doorway, a small voice. Daddy? They both turned. Zoe stood there, backpack hanging from one hand, eyes glassy and fierce in a way that no 7-year-old's eyes should be. Zoe, I told you to wait in the truck. I heard you yelling. I wasn't yelling. You were using your yelling voice. Marcus closed his eyes. Zoe walked past him and stood in front of Olivia, who was still crying, still trying to hold herself together and failing. Are you still Liv? Zoe asked. Olivia wiped her eyes, knelt down so they were face to face. Yes, sweetheart. I'm still me. But you're also somebody else? Somebody famous? Yes. I have a different job than what I told you. A bigger one.
Why didn't you tell us?
Olivia's voice broke to a whisper.
Because I was scared.
Zoe considered this with a profound seriousness only a child can muster. Then she looked over her shoulder at Marcus.
She wasn't fake, Daddy. She was just scared. You told me being scared isn't the same as being bad.
Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. The same thing that had cracked the night he'd saved this woman on the road. The same fissure he'd been trying to seal shut for weeks. Zoe, you always say we should forgive people who are trying. Is she trying? He looked at Olivia, on her knees on the cold garage floor, tears running down her face, looking up at him with nothing left to hide behind. Before he could answer, the sound of tires on gravel cut through the garage. A car door slammed. Footsteps, sharp, deliberate, approached. Martin Cross walked through the doorway like he owned it. Charcoal suit, silver tie, that smile that never reached his eyes.
Well, he said, scanning the garage with the expression of a man surveying an ant farm,
this is where you've been hiding. Marcus stepped forward. Who are you? Martin didn't look at him, didn't even turn his head. He kept his eyes on Olivia. Get up, Vivian. This is embarrassing. Her name is Olivia, Marcus said, harder this time. Now Martin looked at him. A slow, deliberate assessment. Eyes traveling from Marcus's work boots to his grease-stained hands to his face. The look lasted 3 seconds, and it said everything that words would have been too careful to say. And you are? The man whose shop you just walked into without an invitation. How quaint. Martin smoothed his tie. I'm Martin Cross, chairman of Sinclair Dynamics. I'm here to collect our CEO before this little adventure costs the company another $250 million in market value. I'm not coming back, Martin. Olivia stood. Her voice was shaking, but her spine was straight. That's not an option.
The board has been patient, more than patient. Your absence has become a liability. Legal is preparing action. Then let them. Martin's composure slipped for half a second. You're being irrational. I'm being honest, for the first time in years. Martin stepped closer, lowering his voice to the kind of quiet that was designed to cut. Let me be clear, Olivia. Return by Friday, or we freeze your personal assets. All of them, including your mother's trust, the cabin, everything Lillian left you. The name hit like a slap. Olivia's face went white. You wouldn't, she whispered. I already have the paperwork drafted. The board will sign Monday. Unless you're sitting in your chair when the market opens. Marcus moved between them. 6'2", hands still black with grease, eyes harder than anything Martin Cross had faced in a boardroom. You need to leave, Marcus said. Martin looked up at him. The power imbalance was obvious. Marcus had 6 inches and 50 pounds on him. But Martin Cross didn't operate in physical space. He operated in leverage. This doesn't concern you. You're standing in my shop threatening a woman in front of my daughter. That concerns me plenty. Martin glanced past Marcus and noticed Zoe for the first time, standing behind the workbench, eyes wide, hands gripping her backpack straps. Charming, Martin said. Then to Olivia, Friday, Olivia, or everything your mother built disappears. He turned and walked back to the black sedan. The door closed. The engine purred. The car pulled away. The garage was silent. Zoe broke it first. Daddy, that man was mean. Yeah, baby, he was. Is he going to hurt Liv? Marcus didn't answer. He looked at Olivia. She stood perfectly still, arms wrapped around herself, face blank in the way that people go blank when they've absorbed too much to process. Is what he said true? Marcus asked. Can he do that? Yes. Her voice was hollow. Martin has the votes. The board was already moving against me before I left. This just gave him ammunition. Your mother's trust. Everything. The cabin. The account she set up before she died. The scholarship fund in her name. Martin knows exactly where to cut. Marcus exhaled hard through his nose. He looked at the half-finished bronco. At Zoe. At this woman who had lied to him and cried in front of him and knelt on his garage floor asking for something she couldn't name. I don't know if I can trust you, he said. And the words cost him more than he expected. Olivia nodded, slowly, like she'd been waiting for exactly that sentence. Then I should go, she said. Liv, don't, Zoe started. It's okay, sweetheart. Olivia crouched down and took Zoe's hands. I need to figure some things out. But I want you to know, you and your daddy are the most real thing I've found in a very long time. And I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to be honest sooner. Zoe's chin trembled. Are you coming back? Olivia kissed her forehead. I hope so. She stood, looked at Marcus one last time. He saw it all in her eyes. Regret, grief, love, terror. Everything she'd been carrying since that night on Teton Pass, and everything she'd tried to outrun by coming here. She walked out. The Jeep started. Gravel crunched. And then she was gone. The garage felt like a room with the air sucked out. Zoe didn't say a word at dinner. She pushed food around her plate. She didn't ask for dessert. She didn't ask for a story. When Marcus tucked her in, she rolled to face the wall. Zoe? I don't want to talk, Daddy.
Okay, but I'm here.
You made her leave.
She made a choice, baby.
You made her feel like she had to.
The words landed in Marcus's gut and stayed there, heavy as lead. He sat in the kitchen for 2 hours after Zoe fell asleep. The watch was in the drawer. He didn't open it.
He just sat there, hands flat on the table, staring at nothing. Darnell called around 10. "Heard about the newspaper thing," Darnell said. "Half the town's talking." "Great. Also heard a guy in a suit showed up at your shop. Word travels fast. It's Jackson Hole, brother. Word doesn't travel. It teleports." A pause. "You okay?" "No." "She's gone?" "Yeah." "For good?" Marcus closed his eyes. "I don't know." "You want my opinion?" "No. I'm giving it anyway. That woman lied about her name, Marcus. She didn't lie about how she looked at you. And she sure as hell didn't lie about how she was with Zoe. I've been watching. Whatever else she is, she's not fake where it counts. She's a billionaire, Darnell. She runs a tech empire. She's got a board of directors trying to freeze her out, and a chairman who looked at me like I was the help. And? You think you're not good enough? I think I don't live in her world. Maybe that's the point." Darnell let the silence sit for a beat. "You remember what Claire used to say? About the door?" Marcus's throat tightened. Claire had said a lot of things, but he knew which one Darnell meant. "Don't build a wall and call it a door," Marcus murmured. "That's the one. Good night, brother." The line went dead. Marcus sat in the dark with his dead wife's words ringing in his ears, and a billionaire's mother's watch ticking in his drawer, and his daughter's accusation lodged in his chest like a splinter. You made her feel like she had to. He had. He knew he had. And the worst part wasn't the anger or the betrayal. The worst part was that underneath all of it, past the pride and the fear and the walls he'd spent 3 years building, Marcus Reed missed her. He missed the sound of her laugh in his garage. He missed the way she listened. He missed the way she looked at Zoe like his daughter was the most important person in the world. He missed the way she made him feel like maybe, just maybe, enough wasn't all he deserved. He opened the drawer, took out the watch, held it in his palm. "Forever, Mom." 2 words. A dead woman's love, a living woman's plea. Marcus closed his fist around the watch and held it against his chest. And in the dark kitchen of a small house in Wyoming, a man who'd taught himself never to cry, pressed his forehead to the table and let go. Olivia Sinclair drove for 6 hours without stopping. She didn't turn on the radio, didn't check her phone, didn't cry. She was past crying, into that hollow space beyond tears where everything feels muted and far away, like watching your own life through a window you can't open. She drove east toward Denver because east was away from the garage, away from the Bronco, away from a 7-year-old girl who'd held her face in both hands and asked if she was coming back, and a man whose eyes had said what his mouth couldn't. "I was starting to love you, and you ruined it." By the time she checked into the hotel, a corporate suite under a name her assistant had booked, it was past midnight. She sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. Still wearing the clothes she'd worn in the garage, she could still smell the grease, could still feel Zoe's arms around her neck. Her phone lit up on the nightstand. Martin Cross. She let it ring. It rang again, and again. On the 4th call, she picked up. "I'm in Denver," she said. "Good." Martin's voice carried the satisfaction of a man who'd won and wanted you to know it. "The board meets Thursday at 9. Wear something appropriate." "I haven't decided anything yet." "Yes, you have. You left. That's a decision. Now make the one that protects what your mother built." The mention of her mother, weaponized, calculated, hit exactly where Martin intended.
Don't talk about my mother,
Olivia said quietly. Then stop forcing me to. Thursday, 9 a.m. Don't be late. The line went dead. Olivia stared at the phone. Then she did something she hadn't done in 15 years. She called her father. Richard Sinclair answered on the 6th ring. His voice was gravel and distance, the same voice that had read her bedtime stories once, before grief turned him into a ghost who lived in the same house, but existed in a different dimension. Olivia?
Hi, Dad.
A pause. It's late.
I know. I'm sorry.
Are you all right? I saw the news.
I don't know if I'm all right. I'm trying to figure that out.
Another pause. Longer. She could hear him breathing, that slow, careful breath of a man who'd spent decades measuring every word. Martin called me, he said. Told me you'd gone off the rails. His words, not mine.
And what did you tell him?
I told him to go to hell. Olivia almost dropped the phone. In her entire life, she had never heard her father push back against anyone on her behalf. Not once.
What?
I told him that my daughter's mental health was not a boardroom agenda item, and that if he froze your mother's trust, I'd personally fund the lawsuit that buried him. Tears came then, the ones she'd been holding for 6 hours. They came hard and fast, and she couldn't speak through them.
Dad.
I know I haven't been there, Olivia. I know I shut down after your mother died. I know you needed me, and I wasn't. His voice broke. Richard Sinclair, who hadn't shown emotion since 1998, cracked like old ice. I wasn't the father you deserved.
Dad, stop.
No, let me say this. I've been watching you run yourself into the ground for 15 years, and I told myself it was ambition, it was drive, it was your mother's spirit in you. But it wasn't. It was pain. And I let it happen because facing your pain meant facing mine, and I was too much of a coward. Olivia pressed her hand over her mouth. Her whole body shook. Whatever you decide about the company, Richard said, I'm behind you. If you go back, I'll support you. If you walk away, I'll support that too. But don't make the decision based on fear. Don't do what I did. Don't let grief drive.
I met someone,
Olivia whispered. She didn't plan to say it. It just came out. Silence.
He's a mechanic in Jackson Hole. He has a daughter.
She searched for the word.
He's good, Dad. He's just genuinely good. And I lied to him. And I lost him.
Did he ask you to leave?
No. I left because I couldn't face what I'd done.
That sounds familiar. The words landed soft but heavy, because he was right. She'd done exactly what her father had done after Lillian died. Retreated. Shut down. Run from the pain instead of through it.
What do I do? She asked, and she sounded 12 years old again, standing in the doorway of her mother's empty studio, asking a question no one could answer. You already know, sweetheart. You've known since you called. She hung up 20 minutes later, sat in the dark for another hour. Then she opened her laptop, composed 3 emails, and made a decision that would cost her everything she'd built, and give her back the only things that mattered. Thursday morning, Olivia walked into the Sinclair Dynamics boardroom wearing a black blazer her mother had given her before she died. It still fit. Lillian had always said Olivia would grow into it. 12 faces stared at her from around the glass table. Martin Cross sat at the far end, fingers steepled, expression carefully neutral. Welcome back, Martin said. I trust you've come to your senses? Olivia didn't sit. She stood at the head of the table and looked at each face in turn. Some sympathetic, some hostile, most unreadable.
I've spent the last 3 weeks away from this company, she said. And I want to be honest with all of you about why. Martin shifted. Olivia, this isn't the time for... I'm speaking. Her voice was quiet, but it filled the room the way a held note fills a cathedral. Martin closed his mouth. I founded this company when I was 26. I built it because I needed something to pour my grief into after my mother died. I told myself it was vision, innovation, legacy. But the truth is, I was running. I was running from a loss I never processed, and I turned this company into a machine that ran on my pain. No one moved. The deal that fell apart last month, the Meridian acquisition, I poured everything into it because I thought if I could just make it big enough, successful enough, I could finally honor my mother's memory. But that's not how grief works. You don't outperform it. You don't acquire your way past it. You sit with it. You let it change you, and then you decide what kind of life you actually want. Martin leaned forward. This is very moving, Olivia, but the board needs a CEO, not a therapist. Are you returning to your position or not? No. The word detonated in the room. I'm stepping down. 3 board members spoke at once. Martin's face went rigid. Olivia raised her hand. I've already filed the paperwork. My resignation is effective immediately. I've recommended Sarah Chen as interim CEO. She's been running operations better than I have for the last 2 years, and you all know it. The transition plan is in your inboxes. Martin stood. You can't just... I can. I'm the majority shareholder, Martin. I can do exactly this. And while we're being transparent, I've also instructed my legal team to review the proposed asset freeze. My father's attorneys will be in touch. Martin's composure cracked. Just a fraction. Just enough for Olivia to see what lived underneath. Not concern for the company, not fiduciary responsibility, but rage. The rage of a man who'd been outmaneuvered by the woman he thought he'd cornered. You'll regret this, he said. Probably, but not as much as I'd regret staying. She walked out of the boardroom without looking back, down the hallway, into the elevator, through the lobby, out the glass doors into the Denver sunlight, and stood on the sidewalk, shaking, free. Her phone buzzed, a text from Sarah Chen. You sure about this? Olivia typed back. No, but I'm sure about why. She got in her car and sat there for 10 minutes, hands on the wheel, heart hammering. She'd just walked away from a $2 billion company. Her name would be on every financial news feed within the hour. The press would call it a breakdown. The markets would call it a disaster. Martin would call it a betrayal. But Olivia called it the first honest thing she'd done in 15 years. Now came the harder part. Back in Jackson Hole, Marcus Reed was falling apart in the quietest way possible. He went to work. He fixed cars. He picked Zoe up from school. He made dinner. He helped with homework. He did everything he was supposed to do, and none of it felt like enough. Zoe hadn't forgiven him. She hadn't said it outright. She was 7. She didn't have the vocabulary for the specific kind of disappointment she felt, but it lived in the spaces between them. The shorter answers. The way she no longer ran to him after school but walked, deliberate, arms at her sides. The way she stopped talking about Liv entirely, as though erasing the name could erase the loss. It was Darnell who finally grabbed him by the collar, metaphorically speaking. You look like hell, Darnell said, sliding a beer across the bar on a Tuesday night. Thanks. I mean it. When's the last time you slept? I sleep. Staring at the ceiling doesn't count. Marcus took a long drink. What do you want me to say, Darnell? I want you to say what you're thinking, because I know you, and I know that look. That's the same look you had after Claire. That's the,
I'm building a wall and calling it strength, look. She lied to me. Yeah, she did. About her name and her job. What else did she lie about? Marcus frowned. What do you mean? Did she lie about caring about Zoe? No. Did she lie about the grief, about her mother, about the bronco? No. Did she lie when she sat in your kitchen and told you this was real? Marcus stared at the bar. A water ring stained the wood beneath his glass. So what she lied about, Darnell continued, was the part of her life she hated, the part she was running from. She didn't lie about who she was. She lied about who the world made her into. There's a difference. When did you get so philosophical? I pour drinks for lonely people 8 hours a day. You pick up wisdom whether you want to or not.
Marcus almost smiled. Almost.
I'm scared, Dee.
I know.
Not of her. Of what happens if I let her back in and she leaves again. I can survive it. Zoe can't. She already lost her mother. I won't let her lose someone else.
Darnell leaned on the bar, close enough that only Marcus could hear. You ever think maybe Zoe's tougher than you give her credit for? Maybe the worst thing isn't losing someone. Maybe the worst thing is watching her daddy close himself off so tight he can't feel anything anymore. Kids learn how to love by watching their parents. What are you teaching her right now? Marcus finished his beer, didn't answer, drove home in silence. That night, he found the note. It was on his workbench, folded once, written in Zoe's careful handwriting on a piece of lined paper torn from her school notebook. He almost missed it. It was tucked under a socket wrench, placed deliberately where she knew he'd find it.
Daddy, if someone is brave enough to say sorry, we should be brave enough to forgive. You told me that, remember?
He read it 4 times. Then he sat on the shop stool and pressed the paper to his chest. She was right. His 7-year-old daughter, who still couldn't tie her shoes without making the bunny ears loop twice, who thought the moon was made of ice cream, who cried at dog food commercials. She was right. And he was the one who taught her the lesson he was now too stubborn to follow. He opened the drawer, took out the watch, held it under the light. Forever, Mom. A thread, left behind on purpose. Not a goodbye, a beginning that neither of them had been brave enough to finish. Marcus picked up his phone, scrolled to the number the clinic had logged the night he brought her in. It was probably disconnected, probably a burner, probably nothing. He dialed anyway. It rang twice, 3 times, 4.
Hello?
Her voice, cautious, hushed, like she'd been waiting for a call she didn't believe would come. It's Marcus. Silence. Then a breath, ragged. The kind of breath people take when they've been holding themselves together with nothing but willpower, and the whole structure finally gives way.
I didn't think you'd call,
she said. Neither did I.
Marcus, I'm so sorry. For everything. For the lies, for leaving, for not being brave enough to tell you the truth when you deserved it.
I know.
I stepped down from the company. I walked away. He paused.
You what?
It's a long story, but the short version is, I chose. I finally chose.
Chose what?
To stop running. Her voice cracked. I don't know if you can forgive me. I don't know if I've earned the right to ask. But I need you to know that what happened in that garage, with you, with Zoe, that was the first time in my life I didn't feel like I was performing. You made me feel like I could just be a person, not a CEO, not a brand, a person.
Marcus leaned against the workbench, closed his eyes.
Zoe left me a note, he said. What did it say? That if someone is brave enough to say sorry, we should be brave enough to forgive. A sound came through the phone, half laugh, half sob. She's the wisest person I've ever met. She gets it from her mother. A long silence. Not empty, full. Full of everything they hadn't said and everything they were afraid to. I was scared, Marcus said finally. Not of you, of what it means if I let this be real. I lost Claire. I built everything around making sure I never felt that kind of loss again. And then you showed up. First on that road, half dead, and then in my shop, half lying. And you cracked the whole thing open. And I didn't know what to do with that. You don't have to know. Not yet. I miss you. Zoe misses you. The garage is too quiet. I miss you too. Both of you. More than I have words for. Then come back. Marcus, I'm not asking you to fix everything. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to come back and try. That's all. Just try. She was crying now. He could hear it. Quiet, shaking tears that she tried to swallow and couldn't. Are you sure? She whispered. No, but Zoe is, and she's usually right about people. That broken laugh again. When? How fast can you drive? 11 hours later, headlights cut through the darkness outside the garage. Marcus was sitting on the tailgate of his truck, jacket collar turned up, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He'd been there since midnight. Couldn't sleep. Didn't try. The Jeep pulled in. The engine cut. The door opened. Olivia stepped out. She looked different. Not in any way he could name, but in every way that mattered. Lighter. Stripped down. Real. She walked toward him. Stopped 10 feet away. Like she was waiting for permission. Marcus set the mug down. Stood. Crossed the gravel slowly. They stood face to face. Close enough to touch. Neither moved. I was wrong, Olivia said, about so many things. So was I. I should have trusted you with the truth. And I should have trusted you with my fear. Where does that leave us? Marcus looked at her, this woman who had died on a frozen road and lived, who had walked away from an empire because a mechanic and his daughter made her remember what mattered, who stood in his driveway at 1 a.m. with nothing but a Jeep, a suitcase, and the most terrified, hopeful expression he'd ever seen. I was scared of losing what I wasn't sure I deserved, he said quietly. Olivia's eyes filled. I was scared of not being enough. You were always enough, Liv, from the first breath. She closed the distance between them, and he caught her. Arms around her, pulling her in, holding her against his chest where she could hear his heartbeat. The same heartbeat that had brought hers back on that frozen road. She pressed her face into his shoulder and cried. Not the polished, contained tears of a woman trained to keep composure. The deep, shaking sobs of someone finally letting go of everything they'd carried alone for too long. Marcus held her. Didn't speak. Just held her, the way you hold something precious that you almost lost, and somehow, against all reason, got back. After a long time, she pulled back, looked up at him, eyes red, face raw, and more beautiful than any magazine cover had ever captured. I have your mother's watch, he said. I kept it. Couldn't let it go. She shook her head. Keep it. It brought me back to you. That's what she would have wanted. From the front porch of the cabin, a screen door creaked open. Liv! Zoe came flying down the steps in her pajamas, bare feet on cold gravel, hair wild, arms outstretched. She launched herself at Olivia with the full-body trust that only a child can give. No hesitation, no conditions, no fear. Olivia caught her, lifted her, held her tight. "You came back," Zoe said into her neck. "I came back." "Promise you won't leave again?" Olivia looked at Marcus over Zoe's shoulder. He nodded once. "I promise, sweetheart. I'm right here." Zoe pulled back, face serious. "Good, because I drew you something and it took me forever and I'm not starting over." All three of them laughed. Messy, tearful, the kind of laughter that sounds like breaking and healing at the same time. Marcus wrapped his arms around both of them, and they stood there in the dark driveway under a sky full of stars. Three people who had no business fitting together, and yet fit perfectly. Later, inside the warm kitchen, Zoe fell asleep on the couch with her head in Olivia's lap.
Marcus sat across from them, coffee in hand, watching.
"So," he said, "what happens now?" Olivia stroked Zoe's hair. "I don't know. I've never not had a plan before." "Welcome to my life." She smiled. "It looks pretty good from here. It's small. It's real. That's better." He reached across the table and took her hand. She held on like she'd never let go. "We do this together," he said. "Whatever it is. No more secrets. No more walls. Just this." "Just this," she repeated. And in the quiet kitchen of a small house in Wyoming, with a sleeping child between them and a gold watch ticking softly in a drawer, two people who had been broken by loss chose to begin again, not because they were whole, but because they were finally brave enough to be honest about what was missing. Morning came slow and gold through the kitchen window. Marcus woke first, stiff-necked from sleeping upright in the chair, and found Olivia still on the couch, with Zoe curled against her, both of them breathing the deep, steady rhythm of people who'd finally stopped running. He didn't move. He just watched. And for the first time in 3 years, the ache in his chest wasn't grief. It was gratitude. Zoe stirred first. She opened one eye, saw Olivia, and broke into a grin so wide it could have split her face. "You're still here," Zoe whispered. "I'm still here," Olivia whispered back. "Good. I'm hungry." Marcus laughed from the doorway. "Pancakes?" "With faces on them." "You're 7. You don't need faces on your pancakes." "Daddy, I will always need faces on my pancakes." Olivia caught Marcus's eye over Zoe's head and smiled. That real smile, the crooked one, the one that had no performance in it. And something settled between them. Not a promise, not a plan, just a feeling. The feeling of a door that had been stuck for years, finally swinging open. They ate breakfast together. Zoe talked non-stop about school, about her friend Maya who could burp the alphabet, about whether dogs dream, and if so, what they dream about. Olivia listened to every word like it was the most important briefing she'd ever received. Marcus poured coffee and let the sound of his daughter's voice fill the spaces that silence had owned for too long. After breakfast, Zoe tugged Olivia's sleeve. "Can we go to the garage? I want to show you what Daddy did to the bronco while you were gone." Olivia looked at Marcus. "Did you keep working on it?" He shrugged. "Couldn't sleep most nights. Had to do something with my hands." "He talked to it," Zoe stage whispered. "He'd say stuff like, 'Come on, hold together.' And one time he said, 'She better come back for you.'" "Zoe." "What? It's true." Marcus rubbed the back of his neck, caught somewhere between embarrassed and exposed. Olivia pressed her lips together hard, trying not to cry again, trying not to laugh, landing somewhere beautifully in between. They drove to the cabin. When Olivia rolled up the garage door and saw the Bronco, she stopped. Her hand went to her mouth. The truck was transformed, not finished. Marcus would never cut corners on a restoration. But the body had been sanded, primed, and prepped for paint. The engine block, which had been a corroded mess 6 weeks ago, now sat clean and rebuilt on the workbench. New gaskets, new fuel lines, wiring harness laid out and labeled in Marcus's careful handwriting. "You did all this," Olivia said. Not a question. Gave me something to focus on besides being stubborn.
"Marcus, this is..."
She ran her hand along the fender.
"This is hundreds of hours of work."
212, but who's counting? She turned to face him, tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling.
"Why?"
He met her gaze and held it. "Because you asked me to restore it, and I don't quit on a job, not even when the client disappears and turns out to be a billionaire. Former billionaire. Still annoying." She laughed, wiped her eyes, laughed again. "We finish it together," she said. "That was always the plan." They worked side by side that afternoon, the way they had before. Olivia handing tools, Marcus explaining each step, Zoe drawing in the corner with a juice box and a box of crayons. But something was different now. The air between Marcus and Olivia had lost its tension. Not because the problems were solved, they weren't, but because pretending was over. Every glance, every accidental brush of hands, every shared silence carried the honest weight of two people who knew exactly who the other was and chose to be there anyway. Around 4 o'clock, the garage door creaked and Grace appeared, carrying a cardboard tray of coffees and a brown bag.
"I heard through the grapevine that someone came back,"
Grace said, setting the tray on the workbench and pulling Olivia into a hug without asking permission. "And I decided the grapevine needed caffeine." "Grace, I'm sorry Hush, you're here. That's what matters." Grace held her at arm's length and studied her face. "You look tired. You look real. That's an improvement." Marcus snorted. "Don't you laugh, Marcus Reed. You've been moping around my cafe for 3 weeks, ordering black coffee and staring at the wall like a sad country song. You're both a mess. But at least you're a mess together now." Zoe popped up from behind the workbench. "Miss Grace, did you bring the muffins?" "Blueberry, still warm." "I love you, Miss Grace." "I know, baby. I'm very lovable." Grace stayed for an hour. She didn't ask about the company, didn't ask about Martin Cross, didn't ask about the newspaper or the headlines or any of the noise that the outside world had thrown at them. She just sat on an overturned bucket, drank her coffee, and talked about the new menu at the cafe, the leak in her kitchen roof, and the stray cat that had adopted the alley behind the restaurant. Normal things, human things, the things that keep the world turning when the big things try to knock it off its axis. Before she left, Grace pulled Olivia aside. "I told you once that sometimes we carry grief so long, we forget how to set it down." "I remember." "You set it down yet?" Olivia looked at Marcus across the garage, watching him show Zoe how to check the tire pressure, his big hands gentle and patient as he guided her small ones. "I'm learning," Olivia said. "That's enough. Learning's enough." The days that followed, unspooled like thread from a spool, each one a little longer, a little warmer, a little more real. They finished the Bronco's engine. Marcus taught Olivia how to bleed brake lines. Zoe appointed herself quality inspector and took the role with devastating seriousness, marking a clipboard she'd made from cardboard and a binder clip. Evenings, they ate dinner together, sometimes at Marcus's kitchen table, sometimes at the cabin, once on the tailgate of the Silverado with sandwiches and a thermos of soup because Zoe had declared it adventure dinner. Word spread through town, the way word always does in Jackson Hole. Not through announcements, but through observation. People saw Olivia's Jeep parked at the garage, saw her at Grace's cafe, saw her walking Zoe to school one morning when Marcus had an early appointment. Reactions were mixed. Some folks nodded, cautious but open. Others whispered. A few turned cold. The mechanic and the billionaire, the headline and the oil stain. It was too strange, too uneven, too much like a story that couldn't be real. Marcus felt it. He always felt it.
The sideways looks, the careful silences, the way certain customers suddenly found other shops. Being a black man in a small white town meant you developed radar for the things people didn't say out loud. One afternoon, a regular customer, a rancher named Hank, who'd been bringing his trucks to Marcus for 3 years, stopped by to pick up his F-150. "Heard you've been keeping interesting company," Hank said, not quite meeting Marcus's eyes. "Is that right?" "Just saying. People talk." "People always talk, Hank. Doesn't mean they're saying anything worth hearing." Hank shifted his weight. "She's got a lot of baggage, Marcus. Big city baggage. And you got a kid to think about." Marcus set down the wrench he was holding, looked at Hank directly. Not angry. Marcus rarely gave people the satisfaction of seeing his anger. But clear. Unmistakably clear. "Hank, you've been bringing your trucks here for 3 years. I've always given you honest work at a fair price. I'll keep doing that. But who I spend my time with, who I let into my daughter's life, that's mine, not yours, not the town's, mine. Are we clear?" Hank swallowed, nodded, paid his bill, and left. That night, Marcus told Olivia about the conversation. They were sitting on the porch of the cabin, Zoe inside, watching a movie, the sound of animated voices drifting through the screen door. "It doesn't bother you?" Olivia asked. "What, Hank?" "All of it. The talk, the looks." Marcus leaned back. "I've been getting looks my whole life, Liv. First for being black in places that weren't expecting it. Then for being a single dad. Then for being a black single dad running a business in a ski town. You think adding dating a former billionaire to the list changes anything? I don't want to make your life harder. You make my life bigger. There's a difference." She reached for his hand. He took it, held it the way he held everything that mattered. Firmly, without show. "We're going to have to deal with the outside world eventually," Olivia said. "The press, the company. Martin isn't going to just disappear. Let him come. He walks into my garage again, the conversation will be shorter this time." "Marcus, I'm not joking. That man looked at me like I was furniture. Looked at Zoe like she was a prop. He doesn't get to do that twice." Olivia squeezed his hand. "You don't have to fight my battles." "I'm not fighting your battles. I'm standing next to you while you fight them. That's what this is." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I've never had that before." "I know. That's why I'm not going anywhere." 2 weeks later, the Bronco was ready for paint. Marcus had let Olivia choose the color. She didn't hesitate. Forest green. The same green her mother had driven through mountain passes with the windows down, singing off-key, telling her daughter the world was wider and kinder than it seemed. They painted it together on a Saturday morning. Zoe helped with the clear coat, wearing safety goggles that were 3 sizes too big and a grin that could power a city block. By afternoon, the Bronco stood gleaming in the garage, reborn. Olivia walked around it slowly, ran her fingers along the hood, leaned down and pressed her forehead against the warm metal. "Hey, Mom," she whispered. "I found it. The thing you kept telling me to look for. Took me a while, but I found it." Marcus stood back, gave her the moment. Zoe slipped her hand into his and watched quietly, understanding in her own child's way that some conversations happen between the living and the gone,
and you don't interrupt them. When Olivia straightened, her eyes were red but steady. She looked at Marcus.
Thank you for bringing her back.
She was always here, just needed someone to clear the dust. That evening, Olivia spread a set of papers on Marcus's kitchen table. He looked at them, frowned.
What is this? I've been working on something, with my attorneys.
She pushed the papers closer. The Sinclair Foundation. It's a nonprofit, funded from what's left of my personal assets. Not the company, those are tied up in legal. My money. My mother's trust, which Martin couldn't touch because my father's lawyers are apparently terrifying. Marcus scanned the first page. Grant programs, trade apprenticeships, single-parent support, youth workshops. I want to base it here, Olivia said, in Jackson Hole, starting with a garage. My garage. Our garage, if you'll let me. She pulled out a second document. Transfer papers. Full ownership. Co-registered. Reed and Sinclair Restoration Works. Marcus stared at the paper. His name next to hers. His shop. The thing he'd built from nothing. The thing that kept Zoe fed and sheltered. The thing that was his proof to the world that he was more than what people assumed when they looked at him. His name, in legal ink, beside hers. Liv, I can't. You can. You already gave me something I can never repay. A second chance. A reason to stop running. A family. Let me give you something back. I don't need your money. It's not about money, Marcus. It's about building something that matters. Together. Not your world. Not my world. Ours. He read the papers again, slower this time. His hands shook. The same hands that had brought her back from the dead on a frozen road, that fixed engines and braided his daughter's hair, and held this woman in the dark when she finally stopped pretending. Zoe's going to want to name the sign, he said, voice rough. Olivia's face broke into a smile. I'm counting on it. The sign went up on a bright Saturday 3 weeks later, hand-painted by a local artist Zoe had personally selected, a young woman named Keisha who'd grown up in Jackson and had been looking for her first commission. Reed and Sinclair Restoration Works, specializing in more than repairs. In the bottom right corner, Zoe had insisted on a small painted cardinal, wings open, mid-flight. Because cardinals mean someone you love is watching, she'd explained with absolute authority. Mrs. Patterson told us. So it's for your mommy and my mommy. The grand opening wasn't grand by any standard Martin Cross would have recognized. No press releases, no ribbon cutting, no photographers. Just the garage doors open wide, tables of food Grace had organized, and a steady stream of neighbors, friends, and strangers who'd heard through word of mouth that something was happening on the edge of town. They came with broken things. An elderly man brought a sewing machine his late wife had used for 40 years.
A teenage girl asked Marcus if he'd teach her how to rebuild a carburetor.
A young single mother dropped off a toaster that barely worked, but stayed for 2 hours because the warmth of the place made leaving feel wrong. A retired veteran sat in the corner and told stories about engines he'd fixed in Korea, and Zoe listened to every one like he was narrating a blockbuster. Darnell showed up with a cooler of beer and a grin. Look at you, brother, community pillar. Don't start. I'm serious. This is good, Marcus. This is really good. Marcus looked around the garage, at the people, at the laughter. At Olivia, across the room, crouched beside a shy boy of about 10, who was turning a wrench over in his hands like it was made of gold. You think you could really do this? The boy asked, voice barely above a whisper. Fix stuff? For real? Olivia looked at him with those steady eyes. I think you already can. You just need someone to believe in you. And you've got that now.
The boy blinked fast, nodded, clutched the wrench to his chest. Marcus watched, and something inside him, something that had been locked and guarded and carefully controlled since the night Claire died, finally, fully, irreversibly opened. Late in the afternoon, a woman in a tailored blazer walked in. Camera bag, notebook, professional smile. "I'm with Community Roots magazine," she said. "We cover small-town stories of resilience. Someone sent us a photo of your mural with a note. It said, 'Sometimes restoration begins with people, not machines.'" Marcus looked at Zoe. Zoe looked at the ceiling with exaggerated innocence. "You sent that," Marcus said. "I might have sent that." "You're 7. Miss Grace helped me spell restoration." The interview was simple. The reporter asked what made the shop special, and Marcus answered without pausing to think about it. "It's not about the parts we fix. It's about the people we see. Everybody who walks through that door is carrying something. Grief, doubt, a broken thing they think can't be saved. Our job isn't just to fix the object. It's to show them that fixing is possible. That broken doesn't mean finished." The reporter turned to Olivia. "And you, former CEO, now running a small-town restoration shop? Most people would call that a downgrade." Olivia smiled. "Most people measure life by what you build up. I've learned to measure it by what you're willing to break down. I broke down an empire because it was killing me. And I found something here that all the success in the world couldn't give me. A reason to stay." The reporter scribbled fast. "What's the most meaningful restoration you've done?" Marcus and Olivia looked at each other. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Marcus said, "Each other." That night, the three of them sat on the porch swing behind the cabin. Zoe was between them, bare feet dangling, head heavy against Olivia's arm. The day's exhaustion had caught up with her, and she was fighting sleep with the stubborn determination of a child who didn't want to miss a single second.
Daddy,
"Yeah, Zoe?"
are we a family now? Like a real one?"
Marcus looked at Olivia over Zoe's head. Olivia's eyes glistened. She gave the smallest nod. "Yeah, baby girl," Marcus said. "We're a real one."
"Good, because I already drew us.
She yawned enormously.
It's on the wall in the garage. 3 people and a cardinal and a truck. Don't move it."
"Wouldn't dream of it." Zoe was asleep within 30 seconds, mouth slightly open, one hand gripping Marcus's sleeve and the other resting on Olivia's knee, holding them both, even in sleep, the way children do when they've decided something belongs to them. Marcus carried her inside, laid her in bed, pulled the blanket to her chin, stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. Olivia came up behind him and slipped her arm through his. "She's everything," Olivia murmured. "She is."
"Marcus?
"Yeah."
I keep thinking about that night, on the road. You had every reason to keep driving. It was a blizzard. You couldn't see anything. Your daughter was waiting at home. Nobody would have blamed you."
"I know."
"Why did you stop?"
He thought about it. Really thought. Not for the first time. He'd turned this question over 1,000 times in the dark. But for the first time, with her standing beside him, asking. "Because my mother taught me something when I was a kid. She said, 'Marcus, the measure of a man isn't what he does when people are watching. It's what he does when nobody would ever know.' Nobody would have known, Liv. Nobody was on that road. Nobody would have found you until morning, and by then..." He stopped, swallowed. "But I would have known, and I couldn't live with that." Olivia pressed her face into his shoulder. "She raised a good man." "She raised a tired man
who got lucky.
No.
She raised a man who stopped in a blizzard for a stranger and gave her back her life. There's nothing lucky about that. That's character. They stood in the doorway of Zoe's room, listening to her breathe, holding on to each other with the quiet certainty of people who've been through the worst and come out the other side. Not unscathed, not unchanged, but together. Later, back on the porch, Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the watch. Gold. Cartier. The second hand still ticking its faithful rhythm. "I want to give this back to you," he said. Olivia took it, turned it over, read the engraving she'd read 10,000 times before. "Forever. Mom." "My mother bought this the week before she was diagnosed," she said. "She told me, 'Livy, no matter what happens, love doesn't stop. Love is forever.' I didn't understand it then. I was 12.
"And now?"
She looked at him. "Now I understand. Love doesn't stop. It just changes shape."
It becomes the hands of a stranger on your chest in a snowstorm. It becomes a 7-year-old girl who holds you while you cry. It becomes a man who rebuilds your mother's truck because he doesn't know how to say what he feels, so he shows it instead. Marcus's throat tightened. He reached for her hand. She gave it. "I'm not a perfect man, Liv. I work too much. I forget things. I build walls when I should build bridges. I'm stubborn and proud, and I burned my daughter's grilled cheese 3 times last week."
3 times?
The smoke detector has trust issues now. She laughed. That real, full, from-the-chest laugh. The one that had surprised her the first time she heard it in his garage, weeks ago, when the world was simpler and more complicated all at once. "I'm not perfect either," she said. "I run from things. I hide behind accomplishments. I didn't know how to let someone see me until your daughter literally climbed into my lap and refused to let me disappear. So we're both a mess. A beautiful mess." That's what the sign should have said. Reed and Sinclair. Beautiful messes. "I'll call the painter." They sat together in the quiet. No headlines, no boardrooms, no blizzards. Just 2 people on a porch in Wyoming, holding hands, listening to the wind move through the pines and the faint, steady ticking of a gold watch that carried a dead woman's love into a living world. Marcus thought about Claire. He always would. She was written into every part of him. His patience, his stubbornness, his devotion to Zoe, the way he stirred soup counterclockwise, because she'd told him once it tasted better that way. She was gone, and she was everywhere, and he'd finally learned that loving someone new didn't mean letting go of someone old. It meant your heart was bigger than you thought. And Olivia thought about Lillian, about paintbrushes and mountain roads, and a green bronco with the windows down. About a mother who told her that beauty survives everything, even grief, even loss, even the long, brutal years when you forget to look for it. Lillian was right. Beauty had survived. It just looked different than Olivia expected. It looked like grease under her fingernails and pancakes with faces, and a man who'd given her his only jacket in a blizzard without a second thought. In the garage, the Bronco sat gleaming under the overhead light. Forest green. Engine rebuilt. Every bolt tightened. Every wire connected. Ready to run again after 12 years of silence. On the wall beside it, Zoe's drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands. The tallest one had big arms. Because he carries everything. The middle one wore a yellow scarf. The smallest one stood between them, arms raised in triumph, grinning. Above them, a cardinal, wings open, mid-flight. And at the bottom, in Zoe's careful 7-year-old handwriting, 3 sets of initials inside a crooked heart. M.R. plus OS plus ZR.
Some love stories begin with a glance across a crowded room. Some begin with a first date, a shared laugh, a quiet moment over coffee. But this one began with a dead woman's heartbeat returning in the snow, brought back by the hands of a man who had every reason to drive past, and no reason to stop except the one that mattered most. He was the kind of person who stopped. Marcus Reed didn't save Olivia Sinclair's life that night because he expected anything in return. He saved her because that's who he was. And Olivia didn't come back to Jackson Hole because she needed a mechanic. She came back because she needed to remember that she was more than a title, more than a headline, more than the grief she'd been wearing like armor for half her life. They didn't fix each other. That's not how it works. They stood side by side and fixed themselves, with honesty, with patience, with forgiveness, with a 7-year-old girl who understood love better than either of them and wasn't afraid to say so. And that is the truth at the center of this story, the truth that every broken engine, every rusted frame, every shattered heart already knows. Nothing is beyond restoration. Not a car, not a life, not a family, not a man who'd lost his wife and sealed his heart, not a woman who'd built an empire on grief and called it success, not a child who just wanted the people she loved to stay. No one is too broken to be restored. You just need someone brave enough to stop, someone stubborn enough to stay, and someone wise enough to know that the cracks are where the light gets in. This story started on a frozen road in the middle of nowhere. It ended with a family, and that is the only ending that ever mattered.